The Republic is crumbling under attacks by ruthless Sith Lord Count Dooku. There are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. This is the beginning of Revenge of the Sith's opening crawl, detailing the state of the galaxy at the climax of the Clone Wars. It contains an assertion that, when watching the movie on its own, tends to fly under the radar, that there were heroes on both sides of the Clone Wars. You don't really see this in Revenge of the Sith. The line that follows, stating that evil is everywhere, seems a more apt description of the galaxy. But as with many loose threads from the prequels, Star Wars The Clone Wars took it upon itself to show us the heroes on the other side of the Clone Wars, and the evil that threatened to drown them out. But the 2 episodes dedicated to exploring this concept are often forgotten, and without question are the most underrated in the entire show. As the grand finale to our series about the most underrated Clone Wars episodes, today we'll be looking at heroes on both sides and Pursuit of Peace, the 10th and 11th episodes of Season 3. Before we begin, we highly encourage you to pause this video and actually rewatch the arc. Don't worry, we'll be waiting for you when you get back.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
If you've watched the arc just now, feel free to fast forward to the start of the next video chapter here on YouTube. If not, let's quickly recap what happened. At the height of the Clone Wars, the Republic wants more clones, and the Senate is preparing to vote on a bill to waste an exorbitant amount of money on them, funded with cuts to social services. Padme Amidala and the handful of sane people left in the Senate think that this is bullshit, and propose a negotiation with the Separatists instead. To accomplish this, Padme and Ahsoka Tano travel to Raxus Secundus and meet with Separatist Senator Mina Bonteri, who successfully persuades the Separatist Parliament to send a peace proposal to the Republic. Unfortunately, the Sith are determined to prevent an end to the war. A team of Separatist droid saboteurs blows up Coruscant's main power plant while Dooku's agents murder Senator Bonteri, causing the peace deal to be abandoned. But Padme and her allies are determined to stop the purchase of more clones anyway, fearing that it would bankrupt the Republic and screw over the loyalist citizens. They attempt to rally an opposition to the bill, leading the Sith to send bounty hunters out to intimidate the senators into not supporting it. The bounty hunters manage to send Bail Organa, the leader of the opposition, to the hospital, leaving it to Padme to rally opposition before the votes on the bill. Though the fight looks hopeless, Padme manages to sway opinion with a speech about the plight of Republic citizens. As the episode ends, Palpatine muses about how these are some of the things not even the most powerful man in the galaxy can control. Star Wars The Clone Wars was the story of war, but it was always sure to remind us that there's more to war than the frontline battles. Battles are often fought at home as well, and oftentimes the battlefield of politics is more important than any other. Like many Clone Wars episodes, heroes on both sides and Pursuit of Peace are both about politics, but they go a bit deeper down the rabbit hole than any of the other politically focused episodes. They take a look at the Clone Wars as a whole, from the countless battles to the turmoil in the Senate, and ask a simple question: why? In Heroes on Both Sides, the arc begins to answer that question by, well, showing us the heroes on both sides. Now, if a lesser show were to attempt that, we'd get an episode about a Separatist commander with righteous motives that Anakin and Obi-Wan convinced to side with the Republic, or something. But Star Wars The Clone Wars didn't bring us to the battlefield to show us Separatist heroes. Instead, it brought us beyond Separatist lines. In a video about the morality of the Clone Wars, we pointed out that there was no good side to this conflict. Even if you ignore Sith influence, the Republic was hopelessly corrupt and exploited in the Outer Rim, while many of the leading Separatist factions, particularly the corporations, were just as bad or worse. But just because neither side could be considered the good guys doesn't mean there weren't good people, or even heroes, fighting for them. There were heroes in the Clone Wars fighting for good causes, even if the sides they chose were irreparably evil. But for the most part, these heroes couldn't be found on the battlefield. They were the people that both sides were supposed to be fighting for. Through Senator Mina Bonteri, Heroes on Both Sides gives us an approximation of who the Separatists really were. They weren't the ruthless generals, bloodthirsty darksiders, or corporate stooges that we know the CIS for. They were ordinary people who were tired of the Republic exploiting them, people who dreamed of a better galaxy. They resented the awful beings the CIS was known for as much as Loyalists did, and they saw the Clone Wars in much the same way as the Loyalists did, as a tragedy caused by the aggression of the other side. Heroes on both sides also shows us the other side of the coin, that there are villains on both sides as well. The Republic is shown to be absolutely infested with warmongers, greedy politicians, and the very same corporate stooges that we hate the CIS for. If Mina Bonteri represents the good parts of the Separatists, then Nix Card and his allies represent the evil in the heart of the Republic. In a sense, Bonteri and Padme are really on the same side, while Nix Card and the likes of Newt Gunray are on the opposite side. The former campaign for an end to the Clone Wars, and the latter are dedicated to keeping the carnage coming. Unfortunately, it's the villains on both sides that win out in the end. By the time the next episode, Pursuit of Peace, begins, the peace talks are already dead. Pursuit of Peace, we would argue, is the most underrated episode of the Clone Wars. Heroes on both sides took a broad look at why Loyalists and Separatists alike were fighting, but Pursuit of Peace delves even deeper into the cause of the war. Buried within the stated motivations of both sides is another, more integral motivation. Those good faith Loyalists and Separatists support their respective sides because they think it will help their people. This unstated motivation is the fuel behind most wars if you dig deep enough into what each side believes. No matter how absolutely evil a cause, buried somewhere within it is usually a belief that it will help people, no matter how mistaken that belief is. Pursuit of Peace addresses this head on. It's sort of brushed over in the prior episode that the Senate plans to pay for more clones by cutting social services, but this episode goes into more detail, as Padme and Bail talk about how fundamental services like infrastructure and electricity would be under threat from these cuts. We learn later in the episode that conditions are already absolutely appalling on a lot of Loyalist worlds due to similar cuts. Even on relatively wealthy worlds like Naboo, people have unreliable access to running water and limited electricity. Frontier worlds are no doubt suffering far more. Thus, even with the peace deal scuttled, Padme, Bail, and Onaconda Farr fight like hell to stop the passage of the spending bill. This culminates in what is, hands down, the best speech in the entire show. Unfortunately, YouTube won't let us insert the whole speech here, though we'll be sure to post a link to the full version. However, here's the most important part.
If not for people like Tekla and her children, who are we fighting for? My people. Your people. All of our people. This war is meant to save them from suffering, not increase it.
I support our brave soldiers, whether they come from the clone factories or from any of the thousands of systems loyal to the Republic. But if we continue to impoverish our people...
It is not on the battlefield where Dooku will defeat us, but in our own homes.
If not for people like Tekla and her children, who are we fighting for? Just sit with that line for a moment. It's a regrettably common occurrence that people forget why we fight. We become so wrapped up in victory that we lose sight of what the fight is for. Pursuit of Peace argues that when a nation at war ceases to fight for its people, then victory is no longer worthwhile. In fact, it ceases to become a possibility because a nation that fails to consider its people has already lost. It may not be defeated on the battlefield, but it will lose in the homes of its citizens. An easy to miss detail from this episode is that, strategically, the Republic probably does need those 5 million clones if it's going to win the war. Padme knows this, and she takes a stand against the spending bill anyway. This isn't an oversight, but rather a message. To Padme, the lives of loyalist citizens are far more important than the defeats of the droid army. If the cost of Republic victory is the destruction of civilian life in the Republic, then that cost just isn't worth it. This isn't just the message of the episode. In many ways, it's the point of the Clone Wars. In the end, the whole war was for absolutely nothing. Loyalists and Separatists alike lost their freedom, and the Empire came to power. The villains on both sides came out on top, until 20 years later, when the heroes on both sides rose up and beat them off. The Clone Wars is a cautionary tale, and its message is embodied in this episode. Never forget who you're fighting for. So that's our look at the most underrated arc of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. But what do you think? Did you remember this arc? Are there others you would have liked to cover in this series that we didn't touch on? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this series, and I hope to see you in the next video.